Hello and welcome viewers, I am Pia and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines this hour. US President Donald Trump has described his second UK state visit as one of the greatest honours of his life during a banquet at Windsor Castle hosted by King Charles III. He spoke of the unique and enduring bond between the US and UK, likening their relationship to two harmonious notes in a chord. Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show has been suspended indefinitely by ABC after the host faced backlash for his comments about the motives behind the killing of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. ABC has confirmed that Jimmy Kimmel Live will be removed from airwaves for an undisclosed period. China has dropped its antitrust investigation into Google, signaling a shift in its regulatory stance as trade talks with the US continue. The probe, which began in February, centered on Google's dominance in the smartphone market and its impact on Chinese companies like Oppo and Xiaomi. US President Donald Trump has announced a new action against left-wing groups following the killing of right-wing activist Charlie Kirk, specifically targeting the anti-fascist movement Antifa. By designating it a terrorist organization, Trump has stated that he would recommend thorough investigation into those funding Antifa. According to health authorities in Gaza, the death toll in the enclave has crossed 65,000. We're learning that nearly 166,000 others have been injured since the conflict commenced on the 7th of October in 2023. In the last 24 hours alone, hospitals received 98 dead bodies, 385 injured individuals with 7 killed and 87 wounded at food distribution sites itself. Additionally, the health authorities reported 4 more deaths linked to famine and malnutrition. Iran has expressed its readiness to reach a fair and balanced solution with European powers regarding its nuclear program following talks with Britain, France and Germany. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has emphasized that the solution should serve mutual interests and requires an independent approach by European nations. Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have formalized a mutual defense pact, significantly strengthening their long-standing security partnership. The agreement comes amid growing concerns among Gulf and Arab states with regards to Israel. Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been diagnosed with skin cancer after undergoing surgery to remove skin lesions, now 2 of which tested positive for squamous cell carcinoma. The 70-year-old was discharged from a hospital after a brief overnight stay for other medical issues. Meanwhile, Bolsonaro's news regarding his health comes just days after he was convicted for leading an attempted coup. Those are the headlines and our top focus. China has dropped its antitrust investigation into Google, signaling a shift in its approach to regulatory pressure as trade talks with the US intensify. Now, the probe, which began in February, focused on Google's dominance in the smartphone market through its Android operating system, particularly its impact on Chinese manufacturers like Oppo and Xiaomi. This move comes amid ongoing trade discussions between the United States and China over issues including TikTok and Nvidia, with China shifting its regulatory focus towards Nvidia, accusing the chipmaker of violating antitrust laws in its 2020 acquisition of Mellanox Technologies. Now, the termination of the Google investigation is seen as a gesture of flexibility towards Washington as the two powers navigate complex trade negotiations. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung. He is a strategist with regards to China, focusing on economy and politics, joining us live from Hong Kong. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. We've just seen talks wrap up in Madrid. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping are slated to speak tomorrow. Meanwhile, this development has come to light. In your assessment, will this gambit by China work?
Well, flexibility is indeed the word, because both sides are ratcheting up the various restrictions and confrontational tactics, as the United States has recently shown a willingness and a more accommodating approach towards China's national security and national sovereignty and development trajectory as far as technology is concerned. I think that both sides are holding out various types of olive branch, as it were, and this the latest cessation of investigation into Google is one example. But don't forget that Google, of course, is tied in with the Apple huge manufacturing operations in China. In fact, most of the mobile phones with Apple have been produced in China, the vast quantity of it. It's only recently, after the Trump administration's trade war, that a substantial proportion of these operations have moved to other countries, including India. But the fact remains that the supply and value chain, including a lot of the rare earth elements, including, of course, various parts and components, they are all found in China, all over the place. And of course, it accounts for not only Apple's bottom line, but also accounts for a large number of jobs in China. And hence, the latest dialing down the restrictions in terms of the antitrust investigations is again holding out of olive branch on the side of Beijing. And hopefully this would pave a more positive atmosphere for the two leaders to talk to one another tomorrow.
Absolutely, sir. I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking further developments. We do know now trade tensions between China and the United States might be easing, but on the military front, it seems that tensions are simmering. China's Defense Minister Zhong Jun has emphasized the need for global unity, warning that the world is increasingly being divided by quote-unquote, the rule of the jungle. Now, addressing the Beijing Xiangshan Forum on Security, he has decried the following.
需要我们警惕的是，盲目的强调这个急，在军事实力上的绝对优势，信奉实力就等于权力，必然导致一个无序的多极化、丛林的多极化。某些域外国家所谓的航行自由，个别声索国所谓的国际宗裁，公然挑战国际关系的基本准则。中国依法维护领土主权和海洋权益，正是对战后秩序和国际法治的坚定捍卫。
These remarks come amid simmering tensions between China and the US as well as its allies over several flashpoints across East Asia and the South China Sea as well. Still with us on the broadcast is Mr. Andrew K.P. Leung. Interesting statements coming in from the Chinese defense minister. He has stated that the might is right approach is leading to a divided world which is led by the rule of the jungle. He's pointed to what he calls disorder, particularly in the South China Sea. We do see that several experts recently have suggested that China is preparing to invade Taiwan. Do you concur with these experts? All right, there seems to be a network issue with Mr. Leung's connection, sir. I hope you can hear me clearly. I was pointing towards the statements that were being made by the Chinese defense minister. He has indirectly, in a veiled jibe against the United States, stated that the might is right approach is leading to a divided world. He's pointed towards what he calls disorder in the South China Sea. We've recently seen several experts pointing to the increased militarization by China, whether it's the airstrips they are in fact constructing, fresh islands they're building as well. They're suggesting that China is preparing to invade Taiwan. Do you concur with these experts and the assessment that has been made by them?
Well, I don't think that China is about to invade Taiwan anytime soon. But nevertheless, President Xi has repeatedly expressed China's intention to achieve unification with Taiwan at the latest by 2049, which is still some years ahead, which is, of course, is the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. But in spite of that deadline, 2049, China's intention has been encapsulated in 3 white papers on Taiwan. The latest was issued to coincide with Nancy Pelosi's provocative visit to Taiwan, and all the 3 white papers issued over the past 10 years or so reaffirm China's intention for peaceful unification as the 2 countries, the peoples, the same civilization, same language, and then the economies are increasingly intertwined, the peoples on both sides are wishing each other, and so the momentum has been built up along, of course, with diplomatic, geopolitical, and military kind of coercion, if you like, to move the Taiwan towards the negotiation table for a peaceful unification, and giving Taiwan a high degree of autonomy, even more generous than applied to the reunification of Taiwan to Hong Kong and Macau, for example. So I think that this reading that Beijing is about to invade Taiwan anytime soon is totally misplaced, because the Taiwan Strait is a huge barrier. And then I don't think that Beijing would take the risk. But in spite of that, Beijing sees Taiwan as in sovereignty, as in the case of the South China Sea, because the South China Sea is a major a sea lane of communication on which China's economy and economic survival, if you like, depends, because a lot of the trade, a lot of the import of raw materials and energy passes through the South China Sea. And then, of course, in the South China Sea is surrounded by American military assets. The first one is called the First Island Chain Center in Okinawa, the Second Island Chain Center in Guam, along with Americans' allies like Japan and to a certain extent South Korea in the north, and then in the south with the Philippines and also the Quad with Australia and India. So China feels naturally threatened. And then this freedom of navigation along the South China Sea, Beijing sees it as a kind of provocation. In the same way as China is not about to send its navy to patrol the shores along California, for example. So I think that the so-called China threat, China is not about to invade other countries, unlike the Americans' recent exertion of its military power by bombing Iran and so on, and perhaps watching with folded arms to see Israel bombing or sending its air bombers to Qatar, and so I think that this rhetoric about the China threat is twisted, is misplaced. What China wants is a peaceful world so that they can grow this economy. But of course, in the process, China would become much stronger, and would cause Americans sees that this threatens Americans' hegemony. American dominance. And hence you can see that the United States is using all the levers under its arsenal to confront China and also continuing with the rhetoric that China is a demon empire, with the intention to conquer the world. But this is far from the truth.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking our time, sharing your perspective on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting our focus to more updates coming in. We're now learning that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia have signed a new defense pact, declaring that an attack on one nation would be regarded as an act of aggression against both. Now, this agreement comes just days after an Israeli airstrike targeted Hamas leaders in Qatar, sending shockwaves through the Gulf, which has long relied on the United States for security. This deal was signed by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif. A statement from the Saudi press agency has emphasized that the pact seeks to enhance defense cooperation and strengthen mutual deterrence against any potential threats. Now, the signing of this pact, interestingly, follows India's Operation Sindoor, held back in May, which targeted Pakistan's terror infrastructure, neutralizing 9 terror camps. Remember, in April, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was visiting Saudi Arabia. He was being hosted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman when he had to abruptly cut his visit short due to the deadly terrorist attack in Jammu and Kashmir, in which 26 innocent civilians lost their lives. This is what led to Operation Sindoor. With us on the broadcast is Ambassador Mahesh Sachdev, former Indian diplomat, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. At the outset, I would like to ask you, what implications does this particular pact have, considering the tensions in the Middle East, whether between Israel and the Arab states or even Saudi Arabia with Yemen? What's the likely impact for Pakistan?
Thank you for having me on this program, and this is a very important development which needs to be analyzed on the basis of whatever is publicly available at the moment. Defense ties between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia date back considerably, but in formal terms, this agreement updates and previous similar agreements signed in 1982 between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, under which Pakistani troops were deployed in Saudi Arabia. At that time, Iraq-Iran war was waging, and the Iranians were threatening the Gulf countries. Right now, too, the renewal of this agreement or reformulation of defense agreement between the two has taken the impetus of waging war in Gaza. Recent attack on Doha, as you already mentioned, and the Yemenis, Houthis in Yemen, straddling Saudi Arabia to launch missiles and drones at Israel. What Doha attacks seem to have done is to somehow raise doubt about U.S. security guarantees on which the GCC states have relied. If Doha, which hosts largest American base in the Middle East, could not be protected by Americans, then the conclusion drawn is that American word about securing the Gulf during Mr. Trump's visit earlier this year is not exactly worth the paper it's written on. So Saudis and others are looking for adding on to their security by bringing in other stakeholders who would be easier to manage and more predictable in their behavior. And Pakistan fits such a description. So I think that is where this agreement seemed to have been reached. From Pakistani side, they have perceptions about India. So anything that promises mutual security strengthens their hand vis-a-vis India, or so they think.
So a quick point I wanted to raise, since you did mention India. India has reacted to this. The Ministry of External Affairs has put out a statement, and I'm quoting what it says. It says that the government was aware that this development, which formalizes a long-standing agreement between the two countries, had been under consideration. We will study the implications of this development for our national security as well as for regional and global stability. The government remains committed to protecting India's national interests and ensuring comprehensive national security in all domains. Ambassador Sachdev, how do you read into this statement, particularly the part where India has emphasized that it was aware that this pact was in the works?
I think that is significant. The ties between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia are based on their common adherence to Islam. Over the past couple of decades, particularly after Prime Minister Modi's energetic forays in the Gulf, this hyphenation between India and Pakistan seem to have ended. And the Saudi statement quoted by Reuters about this defense agreement does mention Saudi Arabia's robust ties with India, and they have never been better, according to the Saudi source, etc. So there is an intent from the Saudi side to protect their interests with India. And India was the largest buyer of Saudi crude, second largest buyer of Saudi crude. In fact, for us, Saudi Arabia was the largest source. Still, the Russian oil appeared on the horizon. So Saudis who are looking for a continuation of the oil relationship and other ties are likely to abridge the agreement vis-a-vis that they have signed with Pakistan to make sure that India's interests are not affected. And that is where the MEA spokesman seemed to have hinted at that Saudis had kept us in the picture, and we are, he has given a pretty balanced and how should I say, non-emotive response to this development, that Indian side is going to study its implications and ensure our security interests are not hurt. So all seem to be under control.
Indeed, sir, as you pointed out, India and Saudi Arabia do share a robust partnership. Interestingly, India and Saudi Arabia also have an intel sharing agreement that was inked in 2023. With that, I would like to thank you, Ambassador Sachdev, for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we shift our focus towards the United States of America, where we're now learning that US Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has affirmed the Fed's commitment to its independence following the central bank's decision to lower interest rates by a quarter percentage point. Now, this marks the first rate cut since December, bringing the policy rate to a range of about 4% to 4.25%. This comes even as Donald Trump is rallying against the Federal Reserve, criticizing and threatening Powell and demanding that he get his own way on the interest rates. Now, interestingly, Powell has noted that the recent pace of job creation is below the level needed to maintain steady unemployment rate, warning that a rise in layoffs could drive up unemployment. He's also stated that the impact of President Trump's tariffs on inflation is expected to be temporary. Listen in.
This is the first time I believe the Fed's board has had someone with executive branch ties in decades. Does this compromise the Fed's independence from day-to-day politics? And relatedly, how can you maintain the public's perception the Fed is politically independent with this dynamic? Thank you.
So we did welcome a new committee member today, as we always do, and the committee remains united in pursuing our dual mandate goals. We're strongly committed to maintaining our independence, and beyond that, I really don't have anything to share.
All right, there, of course, you've heard what Jerome Powell has had to say. Interestingly, this move comes after a sustained campaign of pressure on Powell from Trump when he has been demanding that Powell lower the interest rates. President Trump has claimed that this would further boost the U.S. economy. This, of course, has been taking place even as Donald Trump is seeking to remove Lisa Cook, one of the members of the Federal Reserve's 7-member board. Meanwhile, joining us on the broadcast is Charles Thompson, an Australian journalist from Sydney. Thank you so much for taking our time speaking to us on NewsX World. Interesting developments from the United States of America. On one hand, the White House has stated that they are receiving investments like never before, that the tariffs are resulting in job creation for the American people. On the other hand, you have the chair of the US Federal Reserve coming out and stating that yes, prices have gone up, inflation has taken place, employment is sluggish as well, and now finally bending to Trump's pressure that he has been placing. Where do you see this battle between Trump and the Federal Reserve headed to next?
Okay, so firstly, this idea that anybody in that position is not political is just not correct. Of course, they may try to show that they're not political, but definitely, and it's clear from the body language we've seen with Trump and the Federal Reserve officer, that they don't enjoy each other's company and they don't want to assist each other. But he's on his way out. I think it's May next year that he has to step down anyway. So a new one will come in his place. So at least he's bringing down, I think, a very small amount. But I think Trump wanted a much bigger reduction. And we'll just have to wait out and see how it plays. And then, of course, there's also the other member who has legitimate issues about their own fraud, which is a very interesting one. Even though they've just won a court case, or it's just the directions, that they can stay until that's decided.
Absolutely. You've spoken about Lisa Cook. She's, of course, won her case, and a federal court did allow her to stay, but it's likely that the Trump administration might take up this matter with the U.S. Supreme Court, which we do know is conservative leaning. Where do you see the legal challenge headed to next?
Okay, I'm not sure if she's won a case. I just think the case is continuing and the court's directed that she can stay, but they've made no judgment on the merits of whether she has committed fraud or not committed fraud. So that still has to play out. And it seems now that in the United States, it's quite common for government officials, because they probably thought they'd never get caught or checked out on this, to misrepresent to get a better loan when they're buying property. So it sounds very much like, I mean, it's alleged, that she's done this a number of times, and the courts, it'll just have to now take its course until that comes out. If it comes out that she has, then definitely she'll have to step down. There's no doubt about it.
All right, so I request you to stay on with us as we're tracking more updates coming in from the United States of America. We're now learning that politicians and television hosts have reacted rather sharply on social media to ABC's decision to pull Jimmy Kimmel Live off air. This comes after comments by the late-night show's host about the killing of Charlie Kirk triggered a threat by the head of the top US communications regulator against Disney. Now, ABC had made its announcement after Nexstar Media Group stated that it would stop airing the show on its 32 ABC affiliates, citing Kimmel's comments. US President Donald Trump has celebrated this development in a post on his platform Truth Social, calling it great news for America. Meanwhile, a number of Democratic lawmakers have assailed the decision, stating that free speech is under attack. Reactions on social media include comments from the governor of California, Gavin Newsom, U.S. Senator for California, Adam Schiff, U.S. Senator for New York, Chuck Schumer, another senator in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, TV host Michael Costa, Don Lemon, and DNC chairman Ken Martin as well. Their comments continue to propel the debate over censorship and free speech as this situation is unfolding. Still with us on the broadcast is Charles Thompson. Interesting development. The fact that Jimmy Kimmel's show has been suspended comes after Stephen Colbert's show was cancelled. Although in Stephen Colbert's case, the network had cited financial issues. Now ABC has come out and it has strongly objected to the comments that Jimmy Kimmel has made. A lot of people, particularly in the left, have come out and stated that political violence by one disturbed individual should never be exploited as justification for broader censorship and control. Would you concur?
Okay, this is Democrat versus Republican. I'm pretty sure the network is paying Jimmy Kimmel a lot of money. They were looking for a way, because the ratings of all TV shows are dropping drastically in America as YouTubers and influencers grow their audiences. So it's quite possible that they took this opportunity. And at the same time, just because he's been sacked from this TV show doesn't stop him from following, let's say, Jon Stewart or Tucker Carlson and starting his own YouTube channel, or on one of the other platforms of social media. So I think it's a bit of a storm in the teacup. Of course, it's going to be difficult for him for a few months as he does that transition. But he's been around for a long time. And whether you like his politics or not, he's a very talented person. So, he could easily start his own channel on the social media platforms and possibly do very well just like the others.
All right, sir. With that, I would like to thank you for taking our time joining us on NewsX World today as we track these developments very closely, shifting focus away from the United States of America towards Brazil. We're now learning that Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, has been diagnosed with skin cancer. The 70-year-old, who was recently convicted of leading an attempted coup, was rushed to a hospital in Brasilia after suffering severe symptoms, including hiccups, vomiting, and low blood pressure. Listen in to what his doctor had to say.
Ok, então foram retiradas 8 lesões. Uma a gente sabia que não era, que era só fibroma. E outras 7 lesões eram suspeitas para câncer de pele. E dessas 7 lesões, 2 vieram positivas para um tipo de tumor que é o carcinoma de células escamosas, que não é nem o mais bonzinho e nem o mais agressivo, tá? É o intermediário, mas que ainda assim é um tipo de câncer de pele que pode ter consequências mais sérias.
Meanwhile, Bolsonaro's legal troubles continue as his lawyers plan to appeal his conviction, which sentenced him to 27 years in prison. Now, amid growing calls for an amnesty bill, his supporters argue that he's a victim of political persecution. Take a look.
É dia triste para a democracia brasileira. E é dia que vai marcar a história desse parlamento.
O que a gente viu hoje aqui é de uma vergonha, é de escárnio que é difícil colocar em palavras.
US President Donald Trump has also criticized the trial, labeling it a witch hunt, while tensions between Brazil and the United States continue to rise. Well, viewers, this is all we have for this particular bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned as we dip into a quick short break.